Hello and welcome to the Believe Show. We're thrilled you're here today. Today we have a surprise. We have two hosts, myself and Eileen, whom you've seen be a guest on this program. And we're thrilled to have Abigail here with us. Hi, Abigail.
Hello, Senya.
And let me tell you a couple of things about Abigail before we start. She is the Vice President for People and Culture in the Americas at the Four Seasons. And the way this came about is Abigail and Eileen were talking about things, and we realized that we absolutely want Abigail on the show. And so we're thrilled that she's actually here. Hello.
Hello. It's lovely to be here with you.
We're going to start with 3 lightning round questions, okay? All right. Question number 1, what did you want to be when you were growing up?
Oh, funny story about that. The first thing I announced was I wanted to be a janitor. And it actually stemmed from an equality issue, to be honest with you. I had 2 friends in the neighborhood. We lived in a cul-de-sac, and the 2 kids that were my age happened to be boys. And one summer we were playing circus. I think the circus had just been in town, and it was hot. And they were being the janitors cleaning up using the hoses and playing with the water. And they told me I had to be the lady on the flying trapeze. And I didn't want to do that. I wanted to play with the water too. And I apparently stomped my way home. And one of the boys' mothers called my mom in tears of laughter to say that I was on my way home and we'd had a dispute. And that was my first career aspiration, I said, in that. So yeah, that's my lightning round answer.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So usually we have like one profession or something. This is awesome. You stood up for what was right in the world. Exactly.
It was a really hot summer.
Yeah. Question number 2, what's one of your favorite foods?
Oh, only one? Chocolate.
Good choice, good call. And then question 3, high school can be a challenging time. What was good about high school for you?
What was good about high school? Great friends and discovery. Yeah.
That was Eileen's answer too. Great friends.
Yeah. We're an anomaly, Abigail. Most people do not, I don't know that most people feel that way in terms of the friends. I think it's usually after after college when you meet your real people. And so I feel so blessed. So it's fun hearing you say the same.
Yeah, I think they were great friends for that time. It is interesting when that was the first thing that came to mind. But as I reflect on it, I wouldn't tell you they're the ones that I've necessarily stayed in touch with. And that college group is that tribe. So it's a good point. But it was at that point in time, that was just so critical. And those folks were so important.
Abigail, we would love to start with kind of a broad question and then get into details, because both Eileen and I know that you've had experience with this, especially over the past year, over 2020. But as a broad question, what is something that you believe to be true that others might not agree with you about?
I think, and 2020 has really helped crystallize this for me, that empathy is just so incredibly important as in humanity, and certainly as a leader. And the opportunity to unlock empathy is, and sometimes too often, untapped leadership skill that can really make all the difference and can be critical to the leader's success and the team's success. And really helping bring a group together. And I think 2020 has been a time where a light has really been shined on that. And we've seen where it can really make the difference. So for me, one of the hopes going into 2021 is that we hold on to that and remember that and continue to build those empathy muscles that were incredibly valuable over everything we survived in 2020.
What are some of the ways that you saw, whether at work or just in general, that people were really stepping up in empathy?
Yeah. I think these crazy circumstances of the pandemic have given people insight into others' lives in a different way. We're literally broadcasting, you're seeing my home. Okay, it's the back of like one of our walls. It's not much of it. But there has been the occasion where I've seen colleagues perhaps in not what we would normally consider work attire, even above the waist in some cases. I mean, I actually talked to my boss at one point in a baseball hat and on camera, and we've heard and seen kids. We've heard the working spouses and overheard conference calls or the background of it. And I think, what perhaps before some of the circumstances we've been thrust into over the course of the last year, those things could have been off limits, and that's not professional. That's not how we do things. And instead, when there has been power in embracing, we're in this together, and that's where you are right now, and more understanding for that. And it may be you right now, but it's me tomorrow who, is trying to figure out 7th grade algebra. Heaven help me. And then realizing that in some cases, those are the least of the problems. And the struggles that people are having, I think that's just been so much more evident. I know we've seen more people bringing their whole selves to work, and those challenges that they're dealing with outside of work really are a challenge that I think successful leaders have leaned into helping people to navigate. Sometimes out of, just necessity, but understanding that great powers come out of that, and good things have come out of it. And we don't have to be so rigid and keep our boundaries and not cross into that, heaven forbid, personal space.
I love hearing you say that, Abigail, because that's the one thing when people ask the type of work I do, I'd like to just say life coaching, because it includes the executive, but we have to do executive coaching and we do life coaching, and it's one person shows up in both arenas. And I've said this forever, and now COVID has given this opportunity for us to realize, oh, right, it is the same person showing up in both spaces. So I love hearing you in the role that you play, really celebrating that and celebrating the authenticity that people bring. This is my life. It's messy sometimes, and I'm still going to show up and do the best job possible. But this is reality. And
Exactly. I think it's really hard to say that I have one focus at work and one focus at home as to who I am and who anyone is as a human being. And I mean, if we just think about our own experiences, do you turn a switch off and say, oh, well, I have different beliefs when I'm at work than when I'm at home? I may respond to them differently. I may show them or give voice to them differently. But is that core belief different because I'm sitting at this desk versus that one? I think that's always been a hard concept for me to, really truly believe in.
Absolutely. And even the expectations too, and we have people going through really tough times, and to have an expectation that someone turns off those feelings or what's happening here, and then they just show up with this bright smile all the time is not also realistic as well.
Right, absolutely. And, Eileen, one of the things you and I have spoken about and I think found some common ground on is caregiving with aging parents, and a reality that so many of us face. Hopefully we're lucky enough to face, right? And if it's not a parent, it's, caregiver somewhere else. And, unfortunately, a couple of years ago, my father was in terminal cancer. And yes, work was a great distraction at times, but it was always about pushing something aside and trying to, have some space from that and doing some compartmentalizing, which was certainly helpful from a sanity perspective at some points. But it never changed that it was going on, and that wasn't a weight that was on me and something I was dealing with. And I certainly felt it in my shoulders and my neck when I was in a meeting. And my colleagues were a great source of strength as well. And knowing that if I was stepping out, they were covering something and they knew what was going on. And I've always felt, whether it was that situation with my father, or other situations as a new mother and other parts of life, that it was important to keep the team informed, not to overshare, but to let people know what was going on so that I could get some of that help. And also to model for others that it's okay for them to have things in their lives as well. And it's okay to share that. And that's part of what being a team is, so we can cover for each other when we have that messy life outside of the work world.
Go ahead, Sam.
What do you think are some of the ways that somebody who wants to be a more empathetic leader, that they could start to do that?
I think it starts with listening. One of the challenges, we expect that by the time you get a certain title or role in an organization, or a title and with leader in it, that you have all the answers. And I think most people come to find, hopefully sooner rather than later in that journey, that it's not about having all the answers. It's about helping a team come together with the solution and with those answers, and they don't have to come from you. And the best way to come up with those solutions is by listening. And the best way to understand others is by that listening. So I think the first step starts with listening and asking questions and showing curiosity, instead of trying to just fill the void constantly with your own thoughts and direction. And really, if we think about empathy, it's all about understanding what it's like in someone else's shoes. And I don't know how you can do that if you don't start with listening.
Yeah, that's really clear. I find sometimes when I hear people talking about empathy, that it's almost like something that is later on the list. I'll give you an example. Eileen and I, as coaches, we often ask people, what health actions do you want to take? And we tell people the typical health actions are sleep, exercise, food, and meditation. And people usually start with sleep. So if they're not getting enough sleep, they will figure that out. I'll go to bed by 9:30. I'll turn the lights off by 10, whatever it is. Then they'll move on to exercise or food, healthy food. And then eventually, as we're working with them as coaches, they'll open themselves up to, I'll be mindful about nature, or I'll do something like this. And I could be wrong, but I feel like empathy is like meditation. It's almost like a later stage. And I wonder if that's true. Actually, let me pause there. Do you feel free to disagree? Do you agree, disagree, feel differently about it?
That's I think a very key step and a great observation. And we tend to think about it last, and we push it back to later. And it's not a priority. So no, I completely agree with you.
So if it's not, and let's say all three of us believe that it could be and should be, what should we all be doing? What should each individual person be doing?
I think first it starts with your own behavior and your own actions. And I think the first step, to even perhaps before listening, is just taking a pause. So perhaps along the idea of ultimately getting to meditation, but that power of the pause. We tend to spend so much time thinking about what we're going to say next, instead of taking time to actually listen. So instead of talking, holding for a moment and pausing, and then asking a question as opposed to providing an answer or an opinion. And it's funny because on the HR side, we talk about the importance of silence in interviewing. And to really learn from a candidate, the best thing is we want to hear from them, not us. But that's really hard for people to do. They want to talk. And we've all heard the old adage of using our mouth and our ears in the proportion in which they appear on our head. But it's harder to practice. And I think the interesting thing is when we do pause and we allow for that space, it's just as hard as sometimes for the other person to practice as well. And there's a desire to fill up that time and that space. So that pause is really the very first step on listening. It's not even so important that I have to have my question ready, because if I just allow time for someone else to talk, they probably will.
I'd imagine that's particularly important right now for you, given your industry has been hit so deeply. And so many industries have been hit so deeply during COVID, and there's a lot of pain and loss within all your hotels, etc. And so to be even able to give that space to listen, even if you can't fix something, that's one of the things I think as leaders, we often want to be able to fix. And there's some things that we can't fix, but to have the calmness to press pause and really listen and be there, I would imagine is serving many of your leaders well right now.
It's a great point. I mean, there's been a tremendous amount that none of us can fix this year. And even as I know we've been going through the process of wrapping up the year and of course doing performance reviews and providing feedback. And what a crazy year to provide feedback on, especially after so many have stepped up in such different ways. But making sure that we really do just allow the space and time. And I think sometimes it's also asking the question a second time or perhaps even a third time. You know, we have so many programmed reflexive answers. How are you today? Oh, I'm fine. No, I'm not fine. I'm so far from fine. and recognizing when you get one of those programmed answers, it might be a good time to ask the question again and try it again. And that also takes time. It means we have to, it doesn't surprise me that most people say the first thing they're going to address is sleep, because I think in our time-starved world, we shave that down. But it does require making space and time for having the conversations, because sometimes those conversations are messy and go longer than the half-hour block your calendar allowed.
I love hearing you say that, Abigail. I saw on LinkedIn somebody had said moving away from how are you doing to how are you feeling, and it gets a whole different answer from people. And there was one really beautiful one that somebody had posted that she said that was the most powerful thing her manager did was ask, how are you feeling? She said, fine. And the manager said, I'm going to just sit here because something tells me you're not fine.
Right.
And it opened up and she felt seen, she felt heard. And it's not that she was trying to cover up. I think you're right. We get in this robotic answer that it's like, I'm fine. Okay, so what do we have on the agenda today? Let's move it on forward. And to give that space to pause and ask the question and hold quiet.
Yeah. The other thing that we've been experimenting with and have found some success is asking people, how are you feeling on a scale of 1 to 10 today? And then there's an opportunity for the follow-up question, or automatically almost comes, I'm a 3 because. And that's been really good, opening up more dialogue instead of just the programmed answer. Plus, people just have to think about, well, am I a 3 or am I a 4? And it opens it up, and we have good conversations. In fact, someone I was talking with earlier this week said, I think I wrapped up my year at a 3, but today this happened, and so I'm at a 4.5 now. And using that also as a relative benchmark, which is there's been ebbs and flows, has been helpful too.
What are some other best practices that you've seen, like this kind of question, or like you've said, listening, a pause? What are other best practices of introducing empathy into leadership?
I think we have been, and certainly in much of my career, have been so reliant on being able to get out somewhere physically and meet and visit with people. And in oversight roles with multiple locations, the opportunity to get out and meet the team and spend time with them and break bread has been something I know I've felt like I lost one of my major tools. And so it was probably in about November that I decided enough of this. I mean, the Brady Bunch screens are great, and thank heavens we have them instead of just conference calls and phone, and we can see and get at least a little bit more with the body language. But it got to the point where I'm just running from one Zoom call to the next, or one Teams meeting to the next, and I missed the water cooler talk. So one of the things that I've started doing with my team is every week I have an hour with 5 different directors from across the group, and no agenda. And we just get together and we've called it hot chocolate with Abigail, because I don't drink coffee. So, but it's bring your own beverage, and with no agenda. How are you doing, and what are you doing to cope with the craziness? And in every single one of those conversations, what we've ended up is learning more about each other on really a personal basis. We've ended up with a fair amount of laughter and jokes and sort of an insight that we take forward outside of just that hour together. And some connections. In some cases, well, I might have known all five. The folks on the call hadn't met each other yet, other than being one on the same distribution list or on big major town halls. So those connections have helped people open up, and while we can't be together, at least have a little bit more time to get to know each other without, again, here's the problem we're trying to solve today. Or here's the deliverable that we're going to walk out of here and have something else on our to-do list with. And it's just created a little bit more space, and I think has also reinforced the importance for that, and how people are missing it.
I'm so glad you bring that up, because I hear executives just say, I used to have dinner with this person when they flew to where I am. I used to do this. We used to have coffee. We could talk about anything. And so that I'm really glad you brought that up.
Yeah.
Along those lines, I have someone who I'm working with, and she said with her team, she'll do something similar, and they'll do a whiteboard and just throw out 3 random questions, and they're just having fun with each other in these, instead of kind of just getting away from. She said her team meetings, she doesn't do any true work in. They're purely, she does one-on-ones with people, and she's like, the team is really about connection.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think finding ways to inject that and inject some fun, again, to me, that goes along with the water cooler, like what we miss. One of the things that we did with our team, and we've replicated now outside of my immediate team, so the people who participated in it took it back. But I think music's incredibly powerful, right? So we got everyone's favorite song and asked them to confidentially sort of submit that. And then we would, for a series of weeks, we would start each meeting with a clip of a song, and everyone had to guess whose it was. And it injected energy. It had fun. You can imagine the commentary that came along with, what do you mean you picked that song? and it's been a way to get to know each other a little bit in a different way as well.
That's so great. I'm sharing that with my leaders.
I feel like, Eileen, if we keep speaking with Abigail, she has another 10 of these that are.
Yeah. We have a great playlist now. I'll have to send it to you.
That's true. That's a good side effect of it. I'll ask you all our 2 ending questions, but I'll ask the first ending question, and then Eileen, if there's something you want to find out, and then I'll ask the last one. So the second to last one is, what thought would you like to leave our viewers with, the people who've been with us today?
I think that we all just need a lot more kindness these days. And if there's anything you can do to continue to up your game around kindness and that empathy that comes from that, and understanding and taking a moment to learn about more about someone else, that's a huge muscle to build. And one that I am confident a workplace and a team benefits from. But I think at this point, the world does.
Eileen?
The one thing that I take away, and I keep saying this in our own home, but Abigail has reinforced it, have space for grace. Just give people grace. Give yourself grace. Practice that empathy with yourself, and then put it outward and give that space.
And I said that actually to my daughter last night, who was annoyed at her father, my husband. And I said, how much does daddy do for you again? Give him a little space and grace. I think that's a great piece of advice, Eileen. We all can use that.
Yeah.
Yeah, my daughter's tired. She said, "I'm tired of you saying the word grace, Mom." I said, "Well, if you give me space for grace, I won't have to say it."
It's circular.
You demonstrate it.
You help me help you.
With your goal. That's great. That's very coaching. That's great. And Abigail, if you could snap your fingers and almost everyone in the world were to take some action, what would you want that to be?
Take that deep breath and pause and go forward with the kindness and empathy.
Abigail, it's been wonderful having you on the show. Thank you so much. Thank you so
Thank you very much. It's a delight to talk with both of you. And thank you for all of the content that you're putting out there. There's a lot for us to learn from. Thank you.
Thank you. A huge pleasure speaking with you. Thank you so much.
Take care. Bye-bye.